Are you sure you're not thirsty? Nah. And that's the last thing I said to the nurse before I passed out. When I woke up, there were several medical professionals surrounding me. And the first thing I said to them was, well, this is awkward. I'm an awkward person. Any awkward people out here? Yeah. I always tell the awkward people because you hit the person next to you as you raise your hand. You're like, oh, I'm sorry. Is your nose bleeding? Oh my gosh. Sorry. There's really two kinds of awkward people, though, that exist in our world. There are those of us who are truly, really awkward, and those of us who simply say we're awkward, but we're liars. And I know you people, because you're out, maybe you're at like prom, homecoming, some other school gala function. And all your friends are around you. Tristy, come on, just dance. You're so good, just dance, Billy. And you're like, no, I'm so awkward, I look stupid, I look dumb. I'm so dumb. And then you walk over to the DJ and you're like, yo, here's my jam. You'll play this song in 23 minutes and 32 seconds. Not a moment sooner. And then you walk out on the dance floor like a spotlight hits you and you have all these moves like Jagger. You look like Michael Jackson in the 80s. And your friend's like, oh my God, you're not awkward. You're like, yeah, I'm not. I'm just an idiot. I'm kidding. You're not idiots. I love you so much. But then there's those of us who are really awkward. And here's how you know if you're one of those people, if you fall into the camp like me. At one point in your life, you have tripped upstairs. Dude, I lived in a house where we had a basement, and when my mom would yell up to me something like, hey, I baked some cookies, I'd go running up the stairs, and I would hit, like, that one step with my shoe. And, like, there's always that moment, though, that brief second where you're like, I'm flying. If I think about this hard enough, I think I can make it. I believe I can fly. And then you hit the steps, right? And you just kind of slide down to the bottom and you just lay there. You're so dejected you don't even want to get up. Your dad comes by, he's like, you tripped up the steps again, didn't you? I'm like, yeah. Can you bring me like a sandwich or something? Just put it near my mouth. I'll just kind of lick it off the floor. So that's me. And when you go through life, you have awkward moments, but you learn a little bit, right? We've all escaped one awkward moment in our life, middle school. Praise the Lord. Where are my incoming freshmen at? We got any people who were in 8th grade, but now you're freshmen? Welcome out of awkward, right? Seriously, I was at an event where I'm serving middle school and high school teenagers and talking, just hanging out. Like Paul said, we love to hang out with you guys and talk. And I'm talking to this one kid, he's taller than me, and he's holding a Mountain Dew. I'm like, so man, like what year are you in high school? He's like, I'm in 7th grade. Like, all right. And we're having a really good conversation. This kid, nothing's wrong with this dude. He's just telling me about his awkward experiences in life, And he's not moving this can of Mountain Dew, and I really want to stress that. He's cool as a cucumber. Until he goes to open, he's going to do the do. And he hits it, and it goes, inexplicably slams this kid, covered in Mountain Dew, and I'm like, oh! Ooh! And I'm like, you okay, bro? And totally awesome. He just laughs and goes, do you see what I mean? Like, it's my whole life. Just like this. Like, it gets better, buddy. You learn how to deal with it, but I'm still learning how to deal with my awkward. And that's how I wound up on the floor of that office, that surgery room. In college, I was going to school to be a pre-med. I was in pre-med. I was a pre-med major. I was going to be an orthopedic surgeon. I was going to do like athletic surgeries, hip replacements, all of that stuff, make a lot of money. My parents were so proud. Markedly less proud when I told them I was going to go into youth ministry. But at the time, I'm like, hey, we'll do surgery. So I went to observe a surgery. The only issue is I didn't eat breakfast that morning. And I didn't have anything to drink that morning. I just rolled out of bed like, I'll be fine. So I'm in like a surgery. I don't know if you've ever been in an operating room, but it's pretty intense. There's nurses everywhere. They're like pulling out buckets and pails, and I'm like, there's gonna be blood in there. I started to feel a little lightheaded because I hadn't really eaten anything, and the nurse kept asking me, like when I got there, do you want anything to drink? Do you want a bottle of water? Nah, I'm good. I'm good. Because I'm one of those people who, like, my awkwardness causes me to not want to inconvenience you, even at the expense of my health. You're like that? Like, your arm could be cut off, and people be like, do you need a Band-Aid? You'd be like, no, it's totally good. Like, it's fine. It's really, don't trouble yourself. I'm just going to bleed out right here. But please don't. And so I'm like, I don't want to feel like, a weirdo for being like, yeah, could I get a bottle of water? Could I get a can of Sprite? And she keeps asking, are you sure you don't want anything to drink? Are you sure you're all right? I scrub up. I put on a surgical mask. I step into the operating room. Are you sure before we walk in, are you sure you don't want anything else to drink? No, I'm good. And my throat's all raspy. I'm starting to get dizzy and lightheaded. And then he started to like make the incision marks with a marker on this just arm that's hanging out of like this big plastic sheet. I got really dizzy. There's no blood yet. I think I need to also emphasize that. I'm getting woozy because a man is drawing on another man's arm with a marker. And then she asked that one final time, are you sure you don't want anything else to drink? And I said, yeah, I'm good. And then I fell backwards and I passed out. In talking with the nurses, they're like, yeah, did you eat anything for breakfast? Did you have any water today? I was like, no. And they're like, well, your blood sugar's low. You're probably dehydrated, which is really why you weren't able to take the intensity of the operating room and you passed out. And I felt embarrassed and awkward. Have you ever been really thirsty? Have you ever really just, your lips are cracked, your tongue's all dry? We're out in the desert, so I'm sure some of us have lived this reality. It's funny because you ask people that, like when you're up in the Northeast, you're like, have you ever been really thirsty? They're like, no, not ever. Like, I'm from the desert, and I live in Phoenix. They're like, yeah, what's that like? I hear it gets hot there, but it's a dry heat, right? I'm like, it's still terrible. 115 stinks, regardless of how dry it is. But maybe you've experienced that. You've experienced like that real, like palpable, excruciating thirst. Or maybe you've had heat exhaustion at one point in your life, or you've been dehydrated. Maybe you've been to a sports practice where you didn't adequately refill the fluids that you were expending and you start to feel lightheaded. It's interesting because this is a natural biological response. And it's a response to a dangerous situation. You see, when we start to get thirsty, when you start to feel that, it's already kind of late. We're already dehydrated. We're already getting sick. And so it's like the emergency signal that we have built in to say you need to get water in your system. Because thirst, if you think about it this way, is really the first step in the process of dying of dehydration. Next time you wake up in the middle of the night to get some water, you're going to be like, I'm dying right now. This is the first step. That guy said that. But it's not just like our physical realities that cause us to be thirsty. There's emotional realities that cause us to long for something, right? If thirst is a physical manifestation of a need for water biologically, what about the ways that we have an emotional longing? For friendship, for affirmation. From the time that you were in kindergarten, preschool, you didn't like being the kid that was left out. You wanted to go into school and have other people like you. We still want to walk into school and have other people like us. It doesn't feel good when we're on the outsides because built in emotionally, we long for relationships, and we long for communion, and we long for community. We have an emotional desire to be around other people, to connect with people at a deeper level than simply catching what they're posting on Instagram and trying not to accidentally like it. Come on, be honest. You've been 43 weeks deep in somebody's Instagram and been like, I am such a ninja right now. Not gonna like your picture and look like that creeper. We have that emotional longing. And that emotional thirst points us to a way that we were designed. We were designed for community. Even if you think of it from a very practical perspective, it's safer as human beings to live in communities and cities and to have friendships and lasting friendships than it is to simply be alone. And so even then, our emotional longing points to something deeper. We have a spiritual longing too. This spiritual thirst for something greater than ourselves. It manifests in all kinds of different ways. You look at beautiful cities, big cities. I was in New York in June, and you look at the buildings that are built in New York City, the art that's centered there, the infrastructure. And it speaks to this longing that humanity has for something great, and so we try to build things that reach up. You look at the history of religions in the world, and we all are trying to reach up. We're trying to reach up and attain something that we know exists inside, that we know is present, but we can't quite always put our finger on it. Spiritually, we have a longing and a desire. We want to satiate a spiritual thirst. And God made us this way. Just like our biological thirst will point us to drinking water, a spiritual thirst is kind of this built-in mechanism that God has given us to point us back to our Creator. That every person, even if they profess to be the staunchest atheist, has this tiny piece inside of them that will never go away. Because just like we can never live our life without the biological reality of being thirsty, of wanting a drink, of needing to have water lest we die, you can never erase the spiritual reality that you require something more than this world has to offer. You require something that only God can offer. And it's built in. But how often do we find ourselves, rather than reaching out, simply settling? I don't know if you've ever drank salt water, but the last time I had to have some was when I got my wisdom teeth out. And I looked like a bunny. I remember Furbies were really big at the time. Have y'all seen Furbies? Creepiest things on the face of the planet. Simply satanic. And you heard it here first. Simply satanic. Actually, I think that was the company that put them out. Simply satanic. Get a Furby. I remember getting my wisdom teeth out, my cheeks were all puffy, and I woke up and there was a Furby in my room. And I looked at it and I was like, man, those things look stupid. And then I looked in the mirror and I was like, oh no. But part of that is like a saltwater rinse, and that's the last time I've ever had salt water because the dentist didn't tell me that I needed to spit that out. I was a little obvious, so I gargled it and I drank it. But what happens if you drink salt water? You become even thirstier. What happens if you really need to satiate your thirst that way? It might work for a little while, but eventually even that will kill you. In our life, we're made for something great, but oftentimes we find ourselves settling. You're made for God, and you're made for God's love. You have this internal longing for that, but how often do you wind up settling essentially for salt water? Things that don't ever really satisfy. And it's not even that some of these things are bad things, but there are people in here tonight who are chasing a dream of a particular college, and that is your end goal. Maybe you've always wanted to go to that school from the time you were really young. You had the sweatshirts, you watched the football games, the basketball teams, and you're like, I gotta get into that school. For some of you, it's just a desire to be the best at a sport that you're in or a music instrument that you play, or to get the lead role in that drama. And those aren't bad things. It's good to want to achieve. But maybe for you, that's what everything is. I am the star of the football team. I will be the lead in that musical. Maybe it's grades. Maybe it's simply affirmation. That everything you do is geared towards the perfect Instagram picture. I got just the right angle. Wipe out my chin fat. Everything you say, everything you do, working towards settling for something that can't satisfy. Now, wanting people to like us isn't always a bad thing because it keeps us cordial and polite to one another when maybe we want to say rude things. Wanting to do well at a sport that you practice at isn't a bad thing. Wanting to get a lead in a musical isn't the bad thing. But what happens if it doesn't work out that way? What are you left with? But then, of course, there's things that aren't simply distortions of a good, but they're outrightly bad. In our desire to be affirmed and to be in a relationship, instead we give ourselves over to a sexual relationship. Because he said that he loved me, she said that she loved me. The only moments that we feel worth anything is when we make ourselves feel worthless. And so we settle for the weird feeling we get when we harm ourselves. We desire to feel happy and to feel up. And so we take substances when we can. We go to parties and we drink so we look like we're something more than we maybe feel we actually are. We put things into our lives and into our bodies and into our very souls that destroy us. But we think, oh, for right now it's working out. For right now it's satisfying this thirst. But you know, like, here's the beautiful thing, is that God puts this voice into our hearts, his very voice speaking to us that says, you know you're made for more than this. Nobody in this room right now who's abusing substances is like, yeah, this is exactly what I was made for. It rocks. I love it. At your very core, you know that he's using you. You know that she's using you. You know that you're using each other. And you may have come in here trying to blot out that voice and trying to shove it to the side and trying to ignore it, but you can't, because something beautiful happens when we step into this place, mess as though we may be. As we encounter something greater than even our own thirst. But God's very love and thirst for us. You see, just as our lives sometimes tend towards settling for less, settling for the minimum, settling for things that will never really satisfy, God's love unsettles us. And God's love should unsettle you, because it's not like any other love you can get offered on this world, because God's love is unconditional. God's love is irrational. God's love is perpetual. God's love is abundant. God's love is without expectation. God's love is unlike anything we can experience here. And so sometimes we're like, no, that can't possibly be. A God like that couldn't possibly exist, couldn't possibly love me. Because our world is bound and broken by conditional love. I'll only love you if. Some of us are from families where our mothers and fathers will only love us if. Some of us are from places where they didn't chase after us when we left, when we needed them to. They didn't say, I love you and it's okay and we'll get through it when you messed up. They left. You're from places where love and your idea of love is broken, and it rightfully so makes us cynical. Could love like that exist that doesn't require anything from me? That doesn't need anything from me? And it unsettles our hearts in a beautiful, beautiful way. And this love that God offers, why? He comes to us to give it. There's a story in John chapter 4 of a woman who goes to a well. And there's a couple really unique things about this story. The woman's a Samaritan woman, and Jesus is a Jew. And these two don't mix. They don't see eye to eye on some really important things. And they don't even associate with one another. It's why Jesus oftentimes in teachings and parables will use a Samaritan as the protagonist, as the good guy, because he wants to unsettle the hearts of his listeners. So this Samaritan woman is at a well drawing water because she has a biological need for hydration. But she's there at a very odd time of the day. She's there around noon, the hottest point in the day, which we all know because we live in the desert. Nobody's going to be like, I'd like to go into the desert near Tucson at noon to grab some water. And yet, here we find this Samaritan woman. And there she encounters Jesus. She encounters a love that goes to where she's at. Why is she at the well at the middle of the day? Because nobody else is at the well, and she's ashamed. She's had 5 different husbands. She's with a 6th man who's not her husband, and here is the 7th man, Jesus, who meets her. And he asks her for a drink, and she says, how is it that you, a Jew, ask a drink of me, a woman in Samaria? For Jews have no dealings with Samaritans. And even right now, some of you are asking that same question of God. As I said, God loves you unconditionally, irrationally, irrevocably. You're saying, how could a God who maybe has seen what I've done love me? How could a God who's perfect and timeless love me? How would he come and meet me? He's here to meet that person down there. They knew like the cross clap and the hand motions, and they shouted like, we love Jesus, yes we do. They got it together. And Jesus says, if you knew the gift of God and who it is that is saying to you, give me a drink, you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water. If you knew the gift of God and who it is that is saying to you, give me a drink, you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water. Jesus asked this woman for a drink. But he's asking for more. You see, he hasn't come for water. He's come for her. And if she only knew that wasn't what was in front of her, she would say, give me what I need. Because I'm trying to find something, and I'm searching for something. I just can't get it. And so I'm here alone in the middle of the day in the sun, drawing water, because I've given in to the lie that nobody loves me. But here is one who does. And here is one who not only loves her, but he loves her despite herself. I'm really blessed to be able to do these kinds of conferences and to hang out with all of you and to hang out with really wonderful people. Like, it's a joy and an honor for me to pray with Josh and with Sarah, to serve alongside Leah and Kelly and Father Jose, Paul. Those are really cool people. And a couple of months ago, I was at a dinner with a lot of people like that. People I really admired and looked up to and respected. And we were getting ready for a conference, kind of like this one. As we're waiting for our food, I went to take a drink out of my water glass, and I spilled it everywhere. Inexplicably, it just slipped out of my hand because I'm awkward and made a mess. And I tried to immediately cover it up because I was embarrassed. I was around all these really cool people I respect, and I'm like, you honestly, you just spilled the water out of your hand? For no reason. You just kind of, poof, there it was. And so I didn't say anything. I had water all over me. I was trying to kind of nonchalantly with my arm move the ice off the table into my lap. It's a mess. And the guy who was sitting across from me, his name's Steve, somebody I really looked up to and respected, just was kind of laughing to himself because he saw everything that was going on. And he just smiled and he said, I saw that. And it's really okay. Jesus knew she had 5 husbands and a 6th that wasn't her husband. He saw that. And yet he goes to her anyway. He saw her brokenness and her sin and her flaws, and yet he goes to her anyway. I saw that. I love you. I'm here. There's a danger as we get started this weekend. And the danger is this. We love to come into these conference halls with the pretending mask that we have it all together. With all of the pretty stuff we want to offer Jesus, all of the good things in our life. I did this many service hours. I got the t-shirt. We come in with a retreat checklist of all the things that we're like, Jesus, these are the areas of my life that are open to you this weekend. And these are the things that I'd like you to do this weekend. So, like, cool t-shirt, check. The band could play Oceans, check, because that song just right here gets me every time. If I could have a really good time in adoration, that'd be good. We come in with wanting all the pretty things and with having all the expectations, but here's the great thing. Like, we won't know where we want to find Jesus and where we want to take Jesus, but Jesus is like, here's the thing. I've already seen everything about you. I saw last weekend. I saw last night. I saw you before you left. I saw the fight with your parents. I saw that time when you were 10, 11 years old. I was with you when you were broken and when you were sad. I was with you in that sin. I've already seen it. Your flaws, your imperfections, I know them better than you do. What you say to yourself in the silence of your heart, I've seen it. The areas where you've broken a relationship with me, I've seen it. And here's the beautiful thing about this God and the mercy he pours out on us. He's like, I don't care about it. I love you anyway. I'm going to come to meet you, even when you hide. Make no mistake, many of us are here today, but our souls are at that well, someplace far from Jesus, far from where he can find us. And we come in with our mask, and we say, I'm going to pray so nobody knows what's going on beneath the surface. Nobody knows what's bubbling in my heart. Nobody knows what brokenness I'm holding. And then the first half of this conference, we kind of wrap up into it, and then by the time we're really kind of ready to hand those things over, it's time to go home. And we put the mask on all over again. But what if this weekend, what if like here at Steubenville West, every person in this room made a commitment to just blow off the mask, to look at one another and say, I'm kind of a mess, did you know that? And it's not just because I'm all sweaty, because I was running around outside and I shouldn't have been. It's because I'm broken and I'm in need of a Savior. And brothers and sisters, there's something beautiful in that. Because if you're perfect and you have it all put together, you have no need of Jesus. But then what do you miss? That love, that mercy that you can't earn and you don't deserve, but Jesus is like, I'm going to give it to you anyway. I'm going to give it to you anyway. Because I already know. And Jesus says, give me a drink to you, because he knows that what you need is him. That you're thirsting for something great. You're thirsting for something more. And beneath the surface, there it is. And as I've been talking, you already know what it is. That's what's so beautiful about the Holy Spirit that's here. It's convicting your heart even now. And tonight, that Jesus is going to come and meet us here. Meet you. You don't have to go anywhere. He's going to meet you here. And that same Jesus is going to be in the sacrament of reconciliation, waiting to hear about all the things he already knows, so he can look at you and say, I love you, and you're forgiven. What would it look like to be honest in prayer tonight? To go beyond all of the things that we normally go through in the cliches, all the things we hide behind, like, I'm all in favor of praise and worship dance moves like the next guy. But what if you take it and you made it something more right away? What if it wasn't about looking unified as a group, but just being honest and broken in prayer before our Lord? What if it was about saying, Lord, I know you know I'm a mess. And I've isolated myself and I've pushed myself away, and I am so desperately in need. I am suffocating and I am dehydrated, and I need that living water that you could pour out on me. And when you say that, Jesus is like, I'm so glad you asked. Because I have so much to pour out. Abundance upon abundance. Because you'll never be able to fathom my love, and yet I will give it to you so you can receive it. And no, you don't need to try to earn it. And yeah, you don't deserve it. But yet I have given it to you, because nothing in the world would I want more than to simply love you. And in that unsettling love, in that great love, in that wondrous love that we cannot comprehend, we simply need to say, yeah, yes. Look, God's going to do great things this weekend. That's a given. But I'm so excited for what he's going to do in your hearts and in your lives. Because right now, we come in deserts, dehydrated, wanting, needing what only one can give. And Jesus says, are you sure you don't want a drink? The next response, brothers and sisters, the next move is yours. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Lord, search us. You know the messes, the broken pieces, the areas that we fall short, and the areas where we hide. Shine your light in that darkness. Shine light that is hope in that darkness. Convict us of the love that you pour out upon us. Move us to receive your mercy tonight as we adore you. Move us to receive your mercy as we go seek out the sacrament of reconciliation. Teach us how to pray. Make us vulnerable. Make us open. Lord, you point out our sin, but you do not call us by that sin. Lord, I just pray that you would overflow this room, that what would be here would be abundant, that it would be so much more than we need, Lord, that it would be so much more than we could take in, but that you would pour it out anyway, that tonight's prayer would be glorious and beautiful and messy and chaotic and dangerous, and that ultimately would glorify who you are. Holy Spirit, teach us to pray. Lord Jesus, give us the living water.